yeah.
We got any ocean in the background? A little bit?
We've got
a corner?
That like surf break and those people.
Okay, cool.
That's going to be enough. I think the priority is like
the cliff and fuck yeah, man.
Well, it's been a while.
Been a while, man. Was it a year's time?
I think so. I left the lake a bit over a year ago.
Yeah, me too, man. I left 13 months ago.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do I even describe you? I think you come up a fair bit because you're a big character in my lake journey.
Character.
And
I'll take character.
You're always bodybuilding, Will. You know, I mean, look at these.
I think we got something left, man. Mid-30s now, mid-30s.
And what else? It's like you often came up when I was selling freediving because people are like scared, like, oh my God, I can't hold my breath. I'm like,
this dude sucks at it. You're good.
Yeah, exactly. I know this guy who's absurdly competent in everything he ever tries, except freediving. So,
hey man, I finally got back down to 10 meters.
Yeah.
Bloody throat and all, we got down there. Keyword we. Keyword we.
Shit. This is the shallowest throat squeeze I've ever witnessed. And
keep your chin tucked, man. Chin down. I tell the same thing to people. Chin down.
That's it. But also, oh my God, and I know you'll downplay this, but for all intents and purposes, 100 days of silence up on a hilltop.
You know, it was 40 plus another 21, so we're talking about 2 months. I don't mind 100. I'd do it again if I could, man.
But it was 60 days and then 40, right?
Well, it was it was 5 and then 3 weeks and then the 40 at the end. So it was a lot, man. Especially for a guy who likes to talk.
Insane.
Or actually express myself, you know?
I remember passing you on the street. I think that was when my mum was around as well, when you just came out of it. And again, you're usually just huge bubble of energy, blah, 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 and you were kind of a bit almost skiddy around people. It was really interesting to see.
You're getting your pulls back on the trail, I would say. I think, in a lot of ways, I still am.
Okay. Well, I'm super keen to, honestly, I'm keen to fill out the story because I obviously knew you quite intimately and closely for a good year and a half. And I have a vague understanding of what your life was before that to lead up to that point. But I really have never fleshed that out with you. And if you're open for it,
of course,
I'd love to get the background story, to be honest. So that's our present day, like weapon, surfer, bodybuilder, meditation, demon, just weapon. But like, what made this man? And where does it all start? Where do you kind of think about your story starting?
I'm an East Coast guy at heart. In the United States, the East Coast is, it's where the United States was birthed in a lot of ways, and where a lot of academia and, Washington, D.C. and the financial system. And I come from a great family back east, well-educated and very much like an East Coast United States family. And I was raised with a lot of those values and with a lot of privilege in that context. And density, in the human being lens, can begets, density. So I think my earliest memories of are wanting to be a pirate. And the funny thing was, after a long time, I finally started leaning into that archetype. So the story starts in a lot of ways. I was born in New York City, and in the city.
Oh wow!
I proudly say that. Upper West Side of New York City. So I get to say I'm from New York City. It's great. And I moved when I was 10 months old with my parents. My dad got a relocation. It was going to be Sydney or London or Toronto. And my mom's dad wasn't well at the time, and they wanted to stay local. So we ended up in Toronto, Canada.
Really?
Oh yeah. And then both my little brothers, I'm one of 3 brothers, were born there. And I don't have many memories except for we were having a going away party. And my dad fashioned me a foil fucking Captain Hook foil, hook. And I was just obsessed with pirates and the movie Hook and Peter Pan. And, I've thought a lot about, like you said, characters and archetypes and the energies behind them. And I see a lot of my story of, yearning for being the cowboy and the pirate and kind of finding the wind in the sails and the alignments with nature or horses. And there's this kind of interplay between the human hero's journey and this great cosmic plan. So a lot of my story kind of begins in those times, and then transitions into naturally youth and going to school, and you're kind of in this like feeder system, grade 1, 2, 3, and I go to a great private school, and then you're supposed to get into college and start a career. And
so was this all in Toronto still?
So Toronto became New York suburbs at like 5 years old.
Okay.
So like we came back.
Imagine if you'd gone to Sydney, man. Wow.
I know, right? I think that's the dream, man. That would have been a totally different tale, Yeah, it was perfect. And then, all things considering, like Toronto's like right over the border from New York, so it wasn't that far. So the point was, like 20-something years was back in the East Coast, in the state of New York, and in that sphere,
Okay. So real quick, because you use your words quite well, I would say. You wield them, so to speak. Has that always been the case? And looking through hindsight, and as you really try to weave quite intentfully a story for yourself, you can apply that language onto those first 20 years of your life. But in that time, if you can take yourself back to, I guess, the fabric of your mind in those moments, was that on your mind so actively, or was it just running in the background? Were you thinking those lines at all?
It's a beautiful question, and it brings me back to some more insecure, blunted expression years that were kind of in the tweener zone. I think teen years and puberty and hormones, and you're getting into like ego politics naturally of like coming up in school systems and who's got the better grades and who's on the varsity team, and that I think time period kind of things dimmed for me a little bit. Before that, I do remember being expressive, and there was a period of time, I think it must have been 11 or 12, and I was like in faith, and I would pray, and I would, we kind of did this like cursory Sunday school Christian thing, and it was kind of just going through the motions of what you do. But I remember having a couple years where I was like speaking to what I thought was a higher power and apologizing for misdeeds, and I felt a connection with something greater in those times. And then, I think as we got into school, and I was a younger kid in grade, and I was at an elite private school, and I was kind of outside looking in, and my light started to dim in those times. And that coupled with middle school and my parents getting a divorce, and there was kind of this fork in the road where the light dimmed, and I became, I would say, meeker, insecure, wallflowers, not like a specific label for it, but I think that was an imprint that was quite strong in those formative years, that naturally, as one gets older, there's like a swing of the pendulum and some overcompensation that happens. But I think back to, youth, and we were really kind of rambunctious. I have two younger brothers, and we were fucking playing pickup sports with the kids and snowballs at cars, and we were an adventurous crew. In the summers, we would spend at an incredible family house on the Connecticut River, and we would go fishing and sailing and golf, and we had quite an active youth. And I think, I was a 90s kid, and we didn't get our first computer till I was 10 or something around there. So I was almost the last generation of youth to grow out without technology, like completely invasive, pervasive to those formative years. So, coming into New York, there was that time, and that was quite beautiful, I remember. And then as I went to this great new school, I was young for my grade. Some of these stories and these kind of imprints started to take over as like, it's a boys' school, and naturally, like, you start jockeying for position.
Yeah, what kind of stories and imprints are you talking about?
So like, I don't make even the JV team, or
what's that?
Junior varsity.
Okay.
Or you don't make the honors class.
For football or something.
For football, or the hockey team. I was an ice hockey player. And then, you're a good regular math student, but honors is a little too hard for you. So like, there's naturally these measurables. Okay. SAT scores, what college you get into. Are you talking to women or girls, and I wasn't quite checking those boxes. Like, I was doing okay, but naturally in like the young ego mind, if you're not checking those boxes and you're not building evidence, you start catching those like limiting beliefs and those lesser than feelings and those like imprints of walking up to the hockey list after the tryout period and seeing your name on the thirds list, the third hockey team. You're not even on JV. So like being an ice hockey player was a big point of identity for me, that I was a good player as like a 9, 10-year-old, and then by 13, 14, I'm now passed up. So what I mean by imprint is like a moment of, oh shit, or oh, not good enough. And then it creates this storyline. And then, you know, as you move forward in life, you start being beholden to that energy of like, oh, and then you start replaying that tape and you start attracting that same energy, you know? So
in your kind of takeaway in, as you'd put it, the energy that you were living amongst and living within throughout those years, those formative years of your teenage and school and whatnot, was really any metric you could use, any external metric you could use to compare yourself and place yourself in some hierarchy, you were sitting average.
Yeah.
And just because it's, I mean, I went to a private school in Australia, but I would say it's at no degree to what's going on in America or maybe Britain as well. Could you just, having seen a lot of the world now and whatnot, paint the picture of what that little bubble of society is like?
I mean, yeah, it's quite humbling to have grown up there where, I mean, think about like academia, and my dad was in finance in New York City, and this is almost like the epicenter for a lot of like what's cutting edge or leading like thought spheres in the United States and thus the world. Because in a lot of ways, the US and the economic power, and there's like a tone set that happens. So Ivy League schools considered like among the most elite institutions in the world. My dad went to Harvard, my mom went to Yale. My dad's working for Goldman Sachs, and like, you know, they're dealing with more money than any entity in the whole world. So naturally there's like a lot of energy that swirls in that space. So the youth and the families is like wanting to continue to feed into that. $250,000 to get into a country club, you know, and spend your summers there.
But you just pay that
to get in the fucking door.
What?
And my dad did well, really well, all things considering, but we were still like a step behind that, the 1% of the 1%, and we were still lesser than. So like when you're not growing up with the greater picture, you see, oh, we're not at the country club, we're at the Rye local pool. We're not like, you know, going on that vacation. And these are just, you don't know any better as a kid. Oh, I'm not getting into the Ivy League schools, I'm at Union College or Syracuse University, which are good to great schools, all things considering, but because the young burgeoning ego mind, you know, you're conditioned to like be in comparison with these quantifications. And having not known any better, and I was average or not quite hitting that mark, and then you start creating these belief systems from these imprints, not getting into the school you wanted, not making the varsity team, insecure around women, and then your masculinity gets questioned. You know, masculinity is like this penetrative, achieving, checking off the boxes, conquering the damsel, whatever. And because I wasn't having those skins or those trophies, I started, you know, creating that storyline, that dimmer light. And it took many years and still to like rebound from that and to help to rebalance the pendulum a little bit.
What, just for a timeline, what age are we talking where this might have been, the light might have been dimmest, let's say?
Yeah, I mean, formative years, 13 to 20, you know, making sure we're good to go.
Yeah. 13 to 20?
Yeah, and these were like boy to man years, puberty. I remember being like embarrassed that I'm not like a super hairy guy, and that I wasn't getting hair on my armpits at like 14, and I wouldn't want to wear a sleeveless shirt. You know, so like these kind of tenets of masculinity. And my dad is a really sweet, amazing, hearted guy. He wasn't a real strong like male influence for me, nor did I have like an older brother. So like some of these early trappings of like boy to manhood like weren't quite actualizing for me. And then I just see this dimmer light in my identity as a young man, like not really allowing for the transition that we all go through as
sure.
males.
And where did you start to maybe find that?
I found that in a lot of ways, you know, when I started my adventure out to California, circa 23, 24, I had a call to adventure moment, like courtesy of a breakup. That was, you know, my victim story says like I was dumped. Ultimately, like I had positioned myself for that due to action or lack thereof, and I had an incredible woman that I'd spent 6.5 years with.
Wow.
From a senior in high school, really not having any legitimate relationship experience, to like diving into a long-term relationship, long distance throughout college, and you know, kind of the full story arc of a romance, the beginning, middle, and end. And when it kind of ran its course, after I think we all might know, like things swirl the drain a few times before it kind of Band-Aid rips off and goes down. She, in a lot of ways, was like a source of identity for me, and this was an incredible young woman that had a beautiful heart and was beautiful, and we were best friends in a lot of ways. And she was launching, and she was spreading her wings in her early 20s upon graduation, and I was a little bit on the failure to launch. And it was kind of one thing. It was in the air one day, and there was a phone call, and it was just like, that was it. And it was like a devastating moment for a young guy, and the victim storyline, like of lesser than, like was compounded. And I basically had my brother living out in Los Angeles or Orange County at the time, and I couldn't clear, you know, I had my mom book me a one-way ticket to go out and clear my head, and it's been like a 10+ year journey of my version of the hero's journey ever since. You know, you have that call to adventure and that kind of like leave the nest moment, and I've been on an incredibly epic ride in the decade plus since.
Wow. So, I mean, 6.5 years, and it sounds like, I might be wrong in this, but it sounds like growing up, struggling for placing your stake of masculinity anywhere. Having a gorgeous woman can often do that, because you can be failing, quote unquote, in any masculine things, but if you have a girl by your side, it doesn't really matter, because that's kind of what the masculinity is relevant towards, right? So would you say that maybe that relationship really helped assuage, fuck, that's way too fancy, you know, abate those feelings of being average, being lesser than in terms of the masculine side?
100%. And cool. I think I even allowed it to artificially inflate my ego, you know, because you're right. I think why a lot of, like, I'll just speak for like heterosexual men, just because that's what I have experience in. Like, a beautiful woman on your side is like it's like a pinnacle achievement, in the sense of like, oh, I've got my shit together, I look good, I've like done all these things to position myself for like attracting this.
Yes.
You know, so men, they want to have the job and the car, and a lot of it's like to position for that. So it's kind of like, in a lot of ways, it represents, the stamp of approval. I've made it. I've got a great woman, I'm good. And, you know, the whole joke is like, you know, and I refer to my higher power now as God, and I'm sensitive that's not everybody's label for him, it, source, whatever it may be. But like, I realize, like, if and when the relationship to God isn't first, and to completely like this inside job of self and God, and you are like looking to any other being for a sense of validation or achievement, like somehow, some way that will be removed from your chessboard. Somehow, some way that will be removed from your journey. If you aren't, you know, kind of like fully in that surrender of like, okay, God, I'm building my relationship with you first, and then I have more spaciousness, like from a whole space to attract and, you know, build something with somebody else. And, you know, that's in a lot of ways what had happened was the universe telling me, hey, dude, like, you got to go find yourself first.
I certainly feel that. And I have zero doubt that any guy who might be watching this feels that as well. Very interesting. And just to break this down and just add some fat onto this skeleton of the timeline, when you said that after college she was ready to launch and you were having this failure to launch, what did her ready to launch look like, and then what did your failure to launch look like?
She got a job like in a kind of a few year development program where there was like a few links in the chain. You would do this and you were salaried, and I had gotten, you know, from my field, I was a sport management major, so I was a really big sports fan growing up, and that's a big part of the East Coast culture. And you know, I felt like I was, like a lot of us want to weave passion and work and kind of like, so I'm going to do a sport management. I interned with a few minor league hockey teams, and I got an internship with the Boston Celtics, the NBA basketball team, and it was kind of like, okay. And then I got this basically ticket sales job for the Cleveland Indians at the time. It's now the Guardians. Indians is like, you know, blessedly so, not the right name. They've repositioned the name to the Guardians, which is a funny poetic look back now that I see the name and the transition of that. And it was like a 10-month program.
What's the funny?
There's just the pirate energy and Guardians, and you like can look back in your story among a few poetic names or things that come up, and you can see breadcrumbs of your divine path. So what I mean by that is, what I've experienced is like spirit will help to hint where your story arc in its highest version is wanting to go. Okay, well, you're maybe not Captain Hook or Captain Cook or Blackbeard, but you're meant to have this pirate energy of freedom, alignment with the stars, finding the wind, the air element, and affixing to the sea. And here we are at this incredible beach where I like to surf, and there's been a lot of this pirate energy that I have kind of adopted as part of my way of operation. It might not directly take form as what we know as a pirate, but in a lot of ways it's got that essence. So Guardian is something similarly protective and supportive of transition and things that I've leaned into with my mission. And yeah, I'd have been part of this program for a year, and I was just starting to work out and feel good with fitness, and like I was kind of like leaning into my physicality, and I was like kind of this burgeoning, growing energy, and I'm at a desk all day making calls. And I remember that there was some of the more, I want to be very careful, but like more, I guess, like kind of what I would consider insecure guys in a closed environment that are looking to feel good in a workplace that didn't really like the vibe of a young Will.I.am.King.
Okay.
So it was my first time like in a job where I'd always been like a really positive like member of most ecosystems. And I had a few teachers growing up, but I there was this kind of energy that when I was feeling good about myself, if there was somebody that didn't really like that light or that shine, there would be adversarial energy, and there would be kind of like antagonism that would come about. And I remember that like I'd almost like, I don't want to say got fired, but it was my first time where things got like on the edge, where clearly something wasn't in alignment, that like not only was I not going to go move forward with this job and with the organization, but like, you know, they could have let me go because it was just like
was this a sales?
It was a sales job, and I didn't.
There's always a bit of yeah,
and if you're not, your numbers aren't there, you're kind of an easy see you later. You're kind of only as good as your numbers, right? So I just think that it was a look at sitting behind a desk and a computer and like really just a directed business sense wasn't necessarily really lining up with the energy that I'd been looking to lean into. So basically I had been living with her in Cleveland, Ohio, which is not where we're from, and we'd all really were in a new city, we're living with each other, we're just out of school, I'm not making much money, this job's not going anywhere, things didn't really go well living together, and I wasn't able to show up as a partner and basics, you know, prepping meals, pulling my weight as a partner. And essentially that year exposed that I wasn't ready to launch as a functioning adult. In a lot of ways she was propping me up, and we kind of ran our course there. I moved back home with my mom and my stepdad and worked at the local, you know, we had a housing development, and they had a meeting house where I was a lifeguard, and basically did a front desk job for minimum wage. And she was in New York City and spreading her wings and social life. And that summer we kind of tried to string things along, and at the end of the summer it was that one night it was done.
Yeah.
And it was quite harsh at the time because I think I wasn't in a strong enough place I was going to hold on. That was a lot of all that I'd had. So she was going to be the one that and this is where I take a lot of responsibility, that it wasn't me getting dumped. I wasn't in a position to be a partner for her. And so she did what she had to do, and I'd had an opportunity to forgive both of us for that a few years ago, which was really cathartic. And naturally, there's no really easy way to break up after that time. And of course, like, on the phone is a harsh way to do it. But ultimately, it was for the best now, as I see a decade later. And it was kind of this opening, you know, and that's where the proverbial call to adventure was able to come in. And
it's hard to, especially in the moment, have that zoomed out view. Hindsight, obviously, with time makes it a lot easier, but you realize that this is the best thing for me and my path and my journey, and I take full responsibility, or at least as much responsibility as I possibly can, because that's what's useful to me. Even if it could be 90% their fault and 10% your fault, but it's not useful for me to focus on the 90% of their fault. That's useful for them.
Yeah.
It's like, it's only useful for me to even think about what I did wrong, or what I can take kind of ownership over. Did it take a long time to get to that point?
You know, I think yes and no. I think initially, like I said, there was, you know, like victim storyline and that type of energy. It just, you know, what they say, misery loves company, and you kind of do that from your own pool, where it's just like, oh, well, there's just another reason I can feel shitty about myself, and just be, like, valid in that thinking.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I got dumped, of course, you know, and then you're just like stewing in that, and you're like wanting to attract this energy of like boohoo.
And it was the ice hockey team years ago, and
and all that, and didn't get it. Like, oh, here's another. And it's like, oh yeah, this again. I know this, and this is, and you're comfortable in that ultimately.
What were because we see this in TV shows and characters all the time, and there's usually some sort of, like, maybe they just turn to weed or like sex or parties, whatever. Was there any coping mechanisms that were going on in your life throughout this whole period?
I think marijuana for sure. I was not a big drinker. I was like insecure about never really liked drinking. I think it's just, in my experience, like a depressant and a depressing vibration and nauseating. And I'd been insecure that I never really loved to drink, even through college, and, you know, drinking culture and a lot of, especially in young United States at the time, I think it's shifted now, but at that time, like, that was what you did socially. So I think I was a dare kid and didn't, you know, I would like hold my breath when somebody's smoking cigarettes. So I would have never considered myself like getting into any substance at all. And, you know, even back then, like, marijuana was considered taboo, and it wasn't, I think it might have been medicinally available in California, but it was still illegal, and, you know, there's like a stigma around it. But when it kind of like, I had a friend, and when I started getting introduced to it, finally, I was like reticent for years. It was kind of, you know, I think situationally and with a lot of reverence, it can be considered a beautiful, powerful plant medicine. And I think that's part of what attracted me to it, was that, like, you know, when you talk about getting high, there's an uplifting vibration, and you start getting more insights. And in a lot of ways, like, that was attracting to me, because there was this shift that would happen there. And proudly, I was never somebody that, like, it was like completely pervasive, but it was kind of like this, I had a long day, you know, you would come home, you do for the day, and you go for your workout, and then early evening you would, you know, smoke your first bowl or whatever, and it was kind of like somebody who had a cocktail at the end of a long day. So you
weren't at 9 a.m. in the morning?
No,
like,
I mean, every, like, maybe a weekend day or a special occasion, or that kind of thing. But it was kind of like anybody who has a cocktail, that's what it was for me. But I think naturally, anytime you're outside of self, or anytime you're like physically ingesting something that changes your vibration, I think that I would say the A word, or addiction, can be a very relative space. But I think naturally there is a dependency and a attraction that you have, and I think cannabis, marijuana was that for me, and tracked for the better part of a decade is something that was a large part of my life. It was and is like something that I haven't been super open with, because still back east and in the health space, like, it can still have a stigma around it. So it was something that there was shame around and was kind of kept to the side. And I think, you know, like a lot of people that smoke a lot of cannabis, you start to like gain what you think is like a level of proficiency with being like high or altered in public. And that was kind of something I guess prided myself on, and like I could go out and surf, or, you know, I've done it, you know, and it becomes, it's interesting that way, because drinking is like, you're very viscerally drunk. But I think marijuana and some of these other medicines can be a little trickier, because it's a different, your motor skills don't really get compromised, and so I think you can get a little carried away. And I acknowledge that in that time, that's what it was for me. And I think coming out to California, and it was like at that time just becoming legal and more ubiquitous, and I think a lot of ways, like it was for people that go out to bar drinking, like it's a cool point of connection, like socially to smoke or to have that was something that connected me with a lot of people, and I had a lot of fun with. And so
when you're meeting people, that can be, like
100%. And it was one of my favorite things to do, was to like connect with somebody, and you smoke a joint, and then you go on a little adventure, go to a meal, and it was fun. And like I'm not regretful at all for those times. And I think spiritually, I see now that plant medicine was a big part of opening me up vibrationally.
It's got to be better, like that image of going for a hike or going for a meal, having had a joint, which again doesn't affect you in such a just ridiculous way compared to the norm of drinking.
Yeah,
already seems healthier, right? Like,
I think so, you know. And I just was literally never attracted to drinking. And I've been like, I don't think I've ever been blackout drunk, and I can probably count on two hands how many times I've actually been. And I kind of did it just to like keep up with, you know, that's what you do, and trying to like force myself into that space. But that's, you know, why I think the cannabis thing was really attractive to me, because it was just a completely different energy, and wasn't depressing and like nauseating and I'm hungover the next day. And, you know, you come out to California and you can like, it wasn't like I'm, you know, hush hush knocking on somebody's door and waiting for a text back from a dealer. It was like your friend has it, or you're like, it was just completely different.
yeah, cool.
So because of that accessibility and just the acceptance of it, it was fun. And it was like, in California, it was like, wow. Like,
it's almost, we're revolutionary in the way we have fun and enjoy social.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, I think it's such a blessing to grow up in the time that I did, because so much evolution and acceptance has happened so quickly, like technology and plant medicine, and it, you know, maybe something we talk about later, and like this great shift of consciousness. And like in the spectrum of thousands of years of like Bronze Age, Industrial Age, like if you look at our growth, it's been just like the law of exponential growth. It's been a fucking super launch. So I can see how I've kind of tracked with that energy. And, you know, I have no regrets at all, because my storyline has tracked just like a lot of us do, which is ego, fear-based storylines, coping mechanisms outside of self, realization that that's not going to fix the problem, that you must look within, and then that kind of dark night in the soul where you actually start really getting to work on yourself.
Very cool. Just before we move fully into California, one other track that came to my mind was, having grown up 13 to 20 in that private school East Coast bubble, was there an aspect of connection with the kind of guys and gals that you were in that space with? It seems like such a bubble of privilege in the country clubs and whatnot. Did you feel like individuals, or that just strata of society, had judgment towards you as you were quote unquote failing to launch, if there's marijuana, but like, was that ever a thing, or were you just completely detached from it?
No, I think so. I think the ego like wants to think that everybody gives a shit. And I don't really think anybody did. I just, in my head, like that was my story. I don't think, you know, I always said I wasn't like, I consider myself just like random in high school. It wasn't like, it was like, I don't like the loser sense, even though I did used to like refer to myself like as a loser and like have that label, because I felt like I was comfortable with it. But it was almost like I was just kind of there. and like on the periphery. And I
So
had
you
this,
didn't have best mates. You weren't part of the group.
you know, I had like 2 really good friends in middle school, and they moved away, and like, yeah, I was always like, and this is like really tracks for me spiritually. And this is what I've come to be quite grateful for, is like, I realized that my higher self and my team have kept like what I see as Will.I.am.King as a little bit on the outside looking in. And like, this is something that we can get into, is what I've come to realize about my mission, is that I haven't been meant to get wrapped up in here. And it's no judgment with the 3D human experience, but my spiritual evolution over many incarnations has situated me to kind of, oh, that didn't work. I wasn't varsity. I didn't get too lost into the ego identity of what success as a human being is, right?
Attached to one dimension of that.
It tends to like the trappings of 3-dimensional consciousness and success. So what I'm saying is like, I started drifting from the mainstream, and I started drifting from academia and drifting from the thought spheres of how we are raised. Like, you know, I've studied, and now we're going to start launching like a lot of esoteric wisdom and thought, and this is a big part of my Guatemalan adventure, was this idea that like all is mind. It's like a hermetic principle that what we see as creation is basically in the thought form of the creator. So we have these like bubbles of like, okay, 3D human experience, but like there's a much bigger game available. And what I'm saying is like, when one doesn't really get situated or kind of have their attached to a sense of identity within 3D consciousness, you have like a little bit of an access to be like, like, all right, maybe something else is out there. And now we see like this answer to the call to adventure and the opening of plant medicine.
But is that not just, I haven't found my standard requirement of success in the 3D dimensions that have been offered to me, varsity sports or academia or social status through jobs? I haven't found one that I have found success in naturally yet, but if I were to find one, maybe I would get attached to that, even if it were a spiritual one.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, because at least the way that I'm interpreting it is like, we're here for a reason. And I think it's really important, especially some of the spiritual ego wants to like drift back off into the cosmos and, oh, I don't want to come back here and play this stupid game. And you start, you know, looking down upon those that are maybe a little bit more on their way down here. So the point is like, I haven't evolved enough spiritually to be worthy of like the quote unquote galactic promotion just yet. So I have incarnated.
What's that?
No, my understanding metaphysically is that like we all are on like this ascension path of greater levels of access and influence into the story of creation. So like as mosquitoes, like we can be like, or as human beings, like we can be mosquitoes or like worker bees. Okay. That like we are advancing the needle in a very, I won't say small, but like a, you know, small way.
Yeah.
And there are higher beings in creation that have a level of access and influence because they have a certain level of ascension and evolution.
Would you say like a tech giant, tech billionaire like Elon Musk then is kind of a higher, because he's affecting so much?
Well, I mean, we could talk about Elon Musk in the sense of like he really wants to go to Mars, and that's like his big dream. And like I think naturally, as somebody that might be a stellar galactic being, he's gonna want to fucking escape and want to go somewhere else. So without getting into a huge conversation on him and his influence, like it would make sense that he would be drawn to something like that because you know, probably his story and his incarnations have been elsewhere.
Okay.
You know, there's people say that like there are hundreds and hundreds of lives that we come here to learn with, and like each lifetime is a vehicle for overall evolution of one's consciousness. So there's compounding interest that happens, and everything that I'm saying is like eventually we all get back on this path. Like, oh shit, the 3D human experience isn't the only game in town. It's not bad. It's not like lesser, it's just grade 1 or whatever it may be. So like naturally, we're all going to want to graduate. And what I've come to understand is that I am looking to be part of this graduation time, and I am leaning into my mission as a facilitator, guide of this opportunity for us in graduation and transition. And
so what does graduation from this 3D human game look like? How do I know if I've graduated?
I think we might not.
Is it I've just died?
I think, you know, well, dying is just another waking up into something else, right? So like, there's like, they say in Spanish, cadenas, you know, there's like these chains of consciousness that happen where one link in the chain, one chapter leads to another. So like the last chapter as Will.I.am.King begets another chapter as something else. And like that gets into a whole conversation of like quantum physics and time, and then like the idea that actually there isn't a beginning or an end, like the circle and the sphere just begins in the same place.
Hey, yeah.
You know?
That stuff's wild.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't even really be in a position to talk about, because our limited gearing of consciousness and words can't really describe it.
Yeah.
Nor do I pretend to have a full understanding of it, or will I ever. So there is this kind of detachment from wanting to fucking figure it out. The more you start waking up, the more you remember, like, oh wow, like I'm quite limited here.
Jesus, take the wheel kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So let's wind it back. You come to California. You're enjoying the weed as a social tool. Your brother was living in Orange County, you said. Now, as far as this is a chapter between here and landing in Guatemala. I know very little other than a bodybuilding journey.
Sure.
What else was going on? What led you to the bodybuilding stuff? Like,
yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, like, less about me doing 2 seasons of Men's Physique. It was about, I moved to Orange County with $5,000, $6,000, not a lot of money. No car, no plan. I went for a couple weeks with a suitcase or 2. So it was kind of this like, okay, I'll just go and clear my head and figure it out. And like, you know, Orange County is nice down there, but it's remote. Public transportation is. I'm living in a neighborhood there was an Indian gentleman that J. Paul Swami Das, rest in peace. My brother was living at his house at the time, and he was having this Brave Life Academy, and he was having people live with him, and he was like wanting to do alternate schooling and faith-based schooling. And
so this is like a guru, dude.
Yeah, you could say that. I think I want to be careful about getting too deep into that, because like gurus and that energy, like there can be ego involved, and I was not in a position spiritually or as a young boy to be like really in a position to like listen to anybody in that kind of psycho-spiritual space. And that it tracks that would be my first landing spot. Yeah. Naturally, I'd kind of like look for any opportunity to get out of there. I'd had a college roommate, or not a roommate, but like.
Did you think like, what are these crazy people doing? Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I see now that I was open. You know, so ultimately though, it was kind of like, get me out of here. I would go see my buddy from college on the weekends up into Los Angeles, and he was moving to Texas. And I literally knew 2 people in California, my brother and my best friend from college, and
he was going.
One of. And they left, and he was moving out of his place for a few months and subletted, and there was really 2 vehicles, which was like lifting weights and riding waves, where I'd like just always wanted to learn how to surf. And this is my favorite surf beach here, Sunset Cliff, San Diego. This is my happy place here, where I go out and paddle out and have my connection with nature and attempt to catch waves, keyword attempt. Some days more successful than others. But I just like wanted to learn how to surf, and I'd had a roommate.
So you didn't surf at this point?
No. I'd been out on a family vacation like once.
Wow.
And fucking flopped around on wave storms and had instructors pushing me in, and I was kind of rookie status.
Absolute
kook status. But it was kind of like, it's a dream, man. Kid from New York, learn how to surf, and you track the poetry, right? I was in college in an international sport relations class, and one group is like studying soccer, one group's studying football, one group's studying baseball, and then I got assigned to the surfing group. So you just see these early breadcrumbs of like the pirate and the waves, and like this was a detracting element for me. I'm just gonna learn how to surf. So I moved in.
SoCal, West Coast.
SoCal, West Coast. I moved in with where my roommate was living. There was this incredible brother, David, who's a brother to this day. And we just kind of decided to surf together, and it was kind of like this buddy comedy that emerged. He was a few years older than me, and he was kind of like, man, God bless you, David. Like, I haven't literally had more fun with one human being than I had with this guy. And David, he's got a fucking heart of gold, and we basically went from being mutual friends to like fucking best mates for 4 years, surfing all up and down California. And we had a fucking absolute blast. And that was kind of like what we did for fun. And I basically got a gig at the Sports Chalet. And I had this moment, I'll share this story, which was like kind of, I say it was like the how bad do you want it moment, right? Yeah. And I think it's one of those imprints that I talked about that frames me for better for worse showing up to the path. And
your hero's journey.
The hero's journey. And you gotta like align with the wave, right? If you're staying in one place and you're not paddling your fucking ass off, especially with a smaller board, you're not catching the wave.
Okay.
So, all right, I'm living with this guy. Okay, I gotta get a job. My parents are like kicking me a little bit of cash to like get me going, but this is not sustainable because, you know, that's maybe a whole nother story. I will share that I had a lot of difficulties with my parents. My parents are well-educated, really beautiful souls. I will say very lightly that I see now maybe spiritually like more in the beginning stages of their remembrance, right? So I think there was some natural clashing with my failure to launch and my vision or lack thereof, and their still oversight of me and the relationship. And
what do you mean by remembrance, real quick?
You know, I think remembrance is what we're all, and I want to just come back to my own beliefs and my own story is that like we're all remembering our galactic divine citizenship. That, oh wow, I'm actually Will.I.am.King, my beloved brother Tim, but like there's a much bigger story here, in that I actually am a child of God. And I was like in those times of like shifting away from faith in California, like I was like I don't know if it was a label, like agnostic atheist, or I don't love that it's definitely a fixed label, but I had that's kind of where I was at. And we can track a little bit of the LA journey, and when things really shifted for me was like, I'm telling the story about this bus ride that I went to. My first job at 15 years old, I was selling shoes at a sporting goods store. Okay. At a small sporting goods store. So here I am, starting my life in California over, and I gotta get a fucking job. At least to just get going. And fucking $200,000 college degree, and I applied for the Sports Chalet $9 an hour mall job, which is a retail job.
Oh, so Sports Chalet is like a sports
Sports Chalet is now defunct, but it was like a California Dick's. Sport, you know, scuba diving gear and baseball gear and cool department sports store. But I'm a sports guy and active, and fucking, all right, I'm gonna get it, you know, and apply for the job. Okay, get the interview, and there's one bus that goes every hour. I had no car, and the one bus goes every hour. And you know, like, I'm overqualified for a mall job. Not to discourage any of people working retail and all that. So it's not as if like I'm not gonna get the job, but you know, the window closes or it opens sometimes, right? Or so there's one bus that goes to the interview at 10 a.m. and it's like the 9:15 bus. And if I miss the bus, I'm not getting to Burbank, or I don't have money for an Uber. So I round the corner, I'm walking about 15 minutes in the neighborhood, and I'm in my dress shoes and my slacks and my button down and maybe a jacket for this mall job. And I turn the corner, and I know the street, I don't know if it's Burbank Boulevard or whatever it is, and I see the bus. And I'm like, yeah, 75 yards away. Or, you know, and I know like, okay, there's the bus stop there, and here's the bus stop, and I'm not making the stop. And here in my dress shoes, I fucking took off like Usain Bolt, and in my dress shoes, I booked it, and I caught the bus at the next stop. Nice. I got on the bus, got the job, $9 an hour, and I got the gears turning. And
$9 an hour.
$9 an hour.
Holy shit.
Right, inflation is like doubled up in like 10 years.
Yeah.
Minimum wage is 17 now. So just, things are like really competitive. But like back then it was still kind of, it was lean times, man. Really, really lean. You know, we're talking like $1 McDonald's hamburger as dinner. You know, a jar of like $1.29 peanut butter as lunch. And my parents, you know, like could have and did for a little while, like give me a little bit to get me going. But ultimately that entanglement, even like the small amount financially, like kept me dependent to their oversight and their influence, and that created adversarial energy. And ultimately, like, that was not gonna like work, because then I needed to launch on my own. I needed to like generate my own traction. So like getting this job was at least some money coming in, and an attempt to do that.
When you got that job and the first initial parts of working it, there's obviously the pride of I'm making my own money, not receiving the little dribs and drabs from my parents. But I imagine it must play some role of like shame because I'm overqualified and $9 an hour.
Yeah.
Which was bigger?
I mean, both. Like, I was so shameful about it. Like, when I'd be dating, I would like bullshit or like make up something that I was up to, and like, because, you know, I was like on online dating and like trying to like, you're getting over a breakup and you want to kind of get back out there, and like, but there was a lot of shame because I'm like positioning myself as like having my shit together, which I didn't, you know? You know, like, it was one of those things where I had a summer working this job and I would get like 3-4 shifts a week, but it was kind of similar energy where, you know, I'm 6'2", Will.I.am.King from the East Coast, has a little bit of muscle, and like very humbly so, like that level of like male energy, and definitely there was some ego involved. I don't think in a bad way. I've really proudly always had like I'd like to think a beautiful heart, and always had that, and been quite proud of my integrity, but my energy and all of that can be triggering for some, especially women sometimes, you know? And I think I remember similarly, there was like a female manager, she didn't love me and I wouldn't get shifts, and I remember just being dicked around, like I never get good shifts, and yeah, so the point was, like, once again, I was kind of in this job where things weren't working out. And I remember I got a shift, or I covered a shift, and I got called, hey man, we don't need you today. And it was kind of this one moment of like, okay, this is not working. My good brother Kawan, love you Kawan, he would talk about the day of disgust, or we would talk about the day of disgust, where something happens and you're just like, fuck that. And I remember like that day happened, I just started applying, okay, and I had, my buddy David and I, we had moved into a 1-bedroom apartment together. 1 bedroom. The bathroom's in the bedroom. So like, there was no privacy at all. God bless us.
Like a jail cell.
Yeah, God bless us. I mean, literally for 4 years, an area of bad vibe. This guy and I like just shared such incredible, pretty intimate male bonding time. And you know, here we are like figuring it out in Los Angeles.
Nice.
You know, in Big Back, California. 2 guys not from there.
And this is the thing, isn't it? This is it's in the movies, let alone LA or New York often is one as well. Like this American hero's journey of making it in the big city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, like literally knowing 2 people that moved away within a few months with no plan and no network and literally nothing.
Yeah.
$5,000.
You don't have the good old friends, you don't have family.
No friends. An uncle in Seattle. No family. No car, you know? So like, I get like fired up about it because I want to remember like, man, how far I've come. And it's been so many people and things along the way. And, you know, I had this day of disgust, and I used to walk, and it was lean times. So I'd had my you could get like the old apartment we lived in had like a communal apartment gym.
Okay.
And I would walk, no car, like an hour and 15 minutes to go back to that gym, because I still had the fob.
Yeah.
I could still fob in, still get my workout.
Oh, the one you used to live at?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And there was a 24-hour fitness, a really busy gym right down the road from our new apartment, and big box gym. I'd never really been in a big box gym before, and it's intimidating.
Is this like a heavy lifted gym?
Well, yes and no. I mean, we're talking like a converted large grocery store. So just to picture a large grocery store with a gym in it, it's like 100, 200 people in there, strong guys, good looking women, full basketball court, full pool, lots of people, fit people. LA, you know. I think we're gonna go sunglasses off. It's all perfect, man.
Yeah.
It's we're grateful for technology helping to capture this beautiful moment.
I know.
Yeah, so we're basically
In the box gym.
Yeah, we're just talking about, and this just weaves into the storyline of fitness, you know, which is to say, all right, if I get a job at this gym, I will have a free gym membership.
Of course.
Right? I don't gotta walk an hour and 15 minutes, because when I was out in Orange County, like, going to the gym was I was scared of the gym in college, out of shape, pudgy, and my hat.
Oh, so that was a question I had. Like, when you were growing up in that state, were you small? Were you fat?
I was kind of athletic, but then I had a big growth spurt in like freshman year. I grew like 5 inches. I still got stretch marks on my back.
Wow.
Where I had this growth spurt, and I was young for my grade, and I think I'm like 6'2". I'm very humbly got some height, but not like a beanstalk. But like a lot of taller folks, or people that grow really quickly, you kind of like take a little while to like grow into your body.
Fill it out, yeah.
So, it took me a little while to get situated there, and what I see now as a blessing is that I was able to grow into the frame and then kind of start working out. So, stunt anything, or get injured. So, that's a little bit of revisionist history to Syracuse, where I went to college, but going into the gym was like what was really scary for me. I was this kind of wallflower, dimmed lights character, as we said, and a gym environment was scary and heavy lifting and all the stereotypical energy.
Sniffing things.
Yeah. So my buddy Jeff, this incredible young guy from New Jersey, got me going on the iron, and off I went. And it was kind of this kind of through line of just working out was a huge, incredible outlet for anger management, for shadow work. And so that's why it still tracked with me in California. It was like getting into the gym. So walking an hour, 15 minutes to the gym, it's just not working anymore. I need a job. Let me get a job at the gym. And I'm well spoken enough at the time, I like to think. And it was the last time I was clean shaven.
Really?
One of my buddies, and I had got the interview, and they put me as a sales advisor. And they want, everybody is looking for good salespeople, because there's kind of low overhead for the most part.
Sure.
And you either produce or you don't.
Exactly.
So they put me as a sales advisor. I didn't sell enough memberships, and they said quit or be fired by the end of the month. And I kind of scrambled, and basically I pleaded to save a job, and they made a new job for me, athletic monitor, which I think previously in 24-hour fitness was a job where you'd oversee the basketball court. Nobody was an athletic monitor, but basically the gym had a towel service where there was like $10,000 worth of towels every month. Buy fucking bundles of towels, wash them in industrial washers, and it's part of the experience of the gym.
Sure.
But you need, like, in a busy gym, you need to do this like all fucking day. Picking up the towels, dirty gym towels, washing them, and that was kind of like everybody pitched in, but naturally, or we're talking the busiest gym in Los Angeles. Thousands of workouts a day, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, thousands of people. And it was kind of one of those things where there was an opportunity to do these fucking towels. And I was doing the towel runs, and okay, you can be athletic
so
monitor.
Just like spending, your job is just basically doing laps of the gym, picking up every dirty towel you find, running them through the wash.
Running through the wash, and then, you're kind of like, replace the spray bottles. Fucking, pick up after the basketball court where a bunch of people left some shit out in the gym, re-rack the weights, keep the peace, help the front desk out. I was like security guard. There would be angry dude in the bathroom and supervising the LAPD coming in.
Extra hand.
Yeah, like jack of all trades, monitor. And like why I share this transition, because like here I am in the busiest gym in Los Angeles, and I've got a freedom now. I'm not tied to the front desk. I'm not selling memberships. I'm traveling around the gym from 7 to 2:30, Monday through Friday.
Cool. And
I have this rhythm for like 2 years where I'm working out after my shifts, I'm surfing, but I'm meeting people now. And I'm this kind of like 20 something, my hair started growing out, I've got some muscle, and it was like kind of this groovy energy started. Feeling, I'm like having a rhythm, and I'm meeting people.
And you weren't feeling any of that familiar tension around the workplace?
No, I mean, I think here I am, young guy from the East Coast, growing up with a bunch of Caucasian people.
you know, so it's like this one in LA, God bless it, man, it's so diverse. And I love that. And I was like, not like white guy number 3049 from the East Coast. Like I was like unique guy in the mix. And naturally, like, yeah, 6'2", 24, 25, muscle, surfer guy. There was like an ego outer layer, kind of like starting to feel good about myself. Attention from women, you know, like some income coming in, you know, and like a lot of people that start lifting weights, there is this like, you know, people want to have a nice car or a nice house or whatever. Like when you have some muscle, like there's this showpiece that you have just by nature. It's not a nice watch, it's not a nice car. It's like
my mate Felix, who's episode 2 I think, said everyone who goes to the gym, especially in that moment of the workout, has a bit of a God complex going on.
100%. And like very humbly so. Like here I am, a guy like scared of, you know, every guy like wants to get jacked. Oh, I want to get jacked, working in the gym. And like, but here I was like actively actualizing that. So like, and this is like in some forms like the peak of masculinity, this fucking Adonis, and like this is the way that my physique was transforming into, because I was just like lifting a lot of fucking weight. And you know, it was kind of one of the, you know, I think any guy in his young 20s and the hair's growing out, like it was kind of this peak physical season for me. And I share the story now about this like this friend of mine that had a coworker that had asked after me. Hey, my coworker wanted to meet you, and cute young gal from the East Coast, and we met, and cute gal, and she was in a Phillies shirt. And I'm a New York guy, I don't like Philadelphia very much, and she was, you know, no makeup on, natural, cute gal. We had a nice moment, that was kind of it. The next night out, my first night out with a couple buddies from the gym, and we were out at the local cantina, new bar in town or whatever. I didn't really go out. Didn't have the means to do it, but it was kind of, I started showing up to things socially. And an hour, not even an hour, like 30 minutes in, she showed up with a friend of hers, like dressed to the nines, like looking incredible. And it was kind of like, oh, hey, and like we basically, off we went. Had a nice night, I kind of played it cool, saw each other at the gym again, and got each other's numbers, and then it was kind of like, we fell in love. And she was spiritually inclined and had given me The Alchemist. It was her favorite book. I never read the fucking book.
Hello.
Yeah, so she gave me The Alchemist, and here I am on the towel card and surfing and having enough money to pay my bills, and now I got a girlfriend again, and feeling good.
And she's cute.
She's cute, and she's an actress, and man, I just, this woman, and I would just love to tell her, and there was a unfortunate dismount that happened there with this situation. That's a little bit ahead of myself, but she was spiritually inclined and pursuing passion and creation in her own way, and she in a lot of ways was like what really helped to situate me on the path. And like this woman is somebody that I'll have like an undying gratitude for, like incredibly so, where she helped to open my heart again, and I was still not ready to be a true partner. And you know, from her perspective, I was the guy she had crushed on, and we had met up, and like, so this was a dream for her. She was like manifesting like, oh, this is my guy, telling her mom I was gonna marry her, she was gonna marry me, and all of these things. And there was like this pressure to be that dude. And you know, I was still kind of like towel card, athletic monitor, 26. She's still,
how old was she?
She was like a year and a half young. She was 24, so I was like 26, 24. And you know, cut shot to a year later, I'm not launching. I'm not in a position to like take us out, and we're kind of like, I'm on my bike. And she had a conversation with me a couple times about like what she needed. Hey, I need a little more of planning. I need a little more. And I just was not emotionally really intelligent enough to like see that she was giving me her, what do they call them? Like, not ultimatums, but like things you can't compromise on. You're like non-negotiables. And I didn't meet that, and a month later it was like she was done.
What were they?
You know, just like growth-oriented mindsets, like more allocation of quality time, like basic things that a woman looks for, you know. And similarly, she was done. And we had kind of this one day and this kind of fight that happened, and it's just, the universe just ripped it apart.
So she had crushed on you, but really been crushing on your potential.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was kind of, I was in the beginning stages of like and one of them I'm really humble with, like really allowing a really beautiful vibration to work through me, like a really benevolent, love-based divine frequency. So what I've come to understand is that like we're all channels and vessels for these higher frequencies to like use us as instruments of creation. And like here I am on this towel cart cleaning up after people, but like, with older people I was really welcoming. And you can imagine a really diverse gym. This is like the highlight of the day for a lot of folks. And I was just like really, people would like write cards for me and bring me presents. And like, I was, in a humble way, I was touching a lot of lives in there, just vibrationally. And I think she had felt that. And she was spiritually inclined and a Scorpio. And
I guess my question is, why do you think she felt the need to impress the pressure on what sounds like, what is it, chasing more money or chasing more like?
No, I mean, I think to give her credit, I think we all want to like, this whole thing is about growth and evolution. Like, okay, it's not about achievement, but like we're meant to continue to move forward. Sorry, hey dude, you're pushing around a towel cart like another year later. Like, what is the plan here? Like, so women naturally with their biological clock and their timelines, and like they have to be discerning with these choices, like especially as you get in your mid-late 20s. And like I want to like remind women that like linear time doesn't have to be what you affix your journey to in motherhood and modern science. So things are different now, but like naturally a woman in her mid, now later 20s is going to be like, is this dude tracking or not? And objectively I wasn't, and I wasn't demonstrating that. So if I'm not showing up in the relationship or prioritizing her and I'm not tracking, I wouldn't hitch my wagon to that. I don't care how good your heart is. Like, you gotta bring something to the table. Not have to, but like that is the idea. Like, this is about, everybody is asked to pull some kind of weight down here. Some people are moving mountains, some people molehills, and those molehills are beautiful, but like that is the ask. And once you're on the molehill, and maybe then it's the bunny hill or whatever fucking metaphor it is, but I wasn't showing up to that. So once again, it was kind of a plateau.
And did you, when that ended, did you recognize it and deal with it and kind of acknowledge that better than you had with that big 6-year one? Or was it a similar kind of bucket you found yourself in?
It was like, we had a breakup conversation in the park. I think we'd had this fight, and then there was like a trying to get it back, but then was kind of like, oh fuck, okay. So then there was like a breakup conversation that happens and I remember she was kind of like going through the spiel of like what's not good enough or where they're at. I remember like she was like talking to me, and like she's like, and I just started tuning around. I looked up at the stars and I was like, I fucking heard this before, man. And it was one of those moments of the story comes back around. Like, here I am all the way out in California, a year-long relationship, not 6, and fuck, man, I've heard this before. And I like looked up at the stars, and I like, it was almost that like, you're not sad, you start laughing, like, oh fuck. And I'm getting that buzz right now from spirit, and that's how spirit reminds me of like resonance, which is like, that was a resonant moment for me in reminding of like, hey Will, like, love you, man. And this is like my guides and my spirit talking to me, hey, if you don't learn, like, welcome to the game here. You're gonna get circled back through.
You're gonna get the, because it's almost like you have to, we all learn similar lessons, and this might be lesson 17, and someone might be on lesson 400, and someone might be on lesson 2, but you can't skip.
You can't, and it's like the learning and like, oh, there's the lesson, but then the integration and then the application, right? Which is like, oh, you didn't really integrate and apply. You know, you
just did the exact same thing that you did to get that girl back in the East Coast, and you did it 8 years later or whatever in a very different circumstance. Yeah. Maybe better girl, blah, blah, blah. But still, it kind of led to the same thing. Yeah,
and I think we all have these like love song moments or heartbreak moments, but I think why it's important to share is like in relationship, in intimate exchange, like your heart and your heart chakra, and you're literally open. You know, so like there's an access point to transformation in that openness. So like I see now for me and for a lot of people why love or love lost is like these kind of like galvanizing moments. So I'm in the park and I'm like, okay, fuck, like I've heard this before, and it was like this moment of, yeah, am I listening or what? Like, and that was the moment of like, okay, I gotta like, something's gotta shift here, man. And this was at the, it's funny because they talk about like the 27 club. I think it was 27 at the time.
Wow.
And you know, you're starting to approach like this Saturn return season and ego death, and so it just kind of started me on this path of remembrance. And I was sad, and I was like kind of back in a little bit of victimhood and some of the coping and escapism, and you know, and I then started kind of listening a little bit more and like actually really working on myself. And I wear this tank, I guess not coincidentally, but
What is it?
Breakthrough Camp, you know, and this is especially raw and beautiful for me in this time. I'd had one of my many friends, I was like the mayor of this gym. So like after the breakup, God bless her, she was a gym goer and she like literally couldn't go to the gym again. She like never saw me. And I feel badly. She knew I'm the mayor of the gym. All right, I just broke up with this guy. I can't fucking go here anymore. So, you know, but like all the people were kind of there for me, and I'd had this.
So everyone knew you were going out and like,
A little bit. I was mostly kind of like there as the, you know, I'm in service, I'm on the clock. So it's not really about my side of the street, but people that I was more friends with like would know what I was going through. And I had a woman approach me as I was talking to a friend, and I kind of shoot her off. And she was like, God bless her for this message. She said, hey, you got a moment, dude? And I was talking to a guy, I was like excited to talk to this cool guy, Zach, and but she kind of approached me and she says, hey, said something I want to tell you, like God has been speaking to me about you. And I know that your heart is hurting, and just know that you're exactly where you need to be, and you're on the right path, and that will, like, when it is that you reach a level of success that you're destined for, you will be able to sustain it and appreciate it based on the journey and experience that you're having. And that like God is really, he's with you. And like this was like an incredible message that found me in this time. And I'd had this friend, Jimmy James Franzo, who we just lost, at least on this side back in November, that had these breakthrough camps, these men's retreats that he had put together. And he was somebody big in the recovery space and a fucking larger than life character of all characters, literally heart of gold, a heart transplant, and saw something in a young guy and sponsored me to go on 3 breakthrough camps in 2018 after this breakup.
Wow.
And these were out in Joshua Tree, which I'll be back out this weekend. And we had went out into the desert to do men's work, meditation, ice bath, yoga, ceremony. And I got sponsored when guys were paying thousands of dollars, couple $1,000 to go out there. And these men's camps, these breakthrough camps, helped to like open me up spiritually and get me around my brothers and get out in the fire and get out in the desert, which is this place of death and transformation. And sure enough, like I was opening up spiritually. Okay, I have my friend, the best trainer at 24 Hour Fitness. Hey, Will, I'm leaving to start a new gym in San Diego. I want you to get your personal training certification, and we'll hire you as our first trainer. So we kind of had this covert mission where we got 24 Hour Fitness to sponsor me as a trainer to transition and be a trainer at 24. And I did that for a few months. In circa January 2019, we jumped ship, and I made a big send down to San Diego, because after this breakup with this gal, and she was an actress, I was kind of like, what am I doing in LA? We talked about it. Like, LA is a great town, diverse, creative, eclectic, but I'd like the surfing and the outdoors of California, but I wasn't tracking. 2018, not tracking directly towards that next step. I'm opening up, I'm growing. Okay, what's the next move? Get your PT cert. You've been around gyms, you know, working out, you're healthy enough. Ego mind says, oh, I don't eat super clean, or I'm not this or that. Who am I to tell people what to do? But sure enough, I study for my PT cert, get my certification, start training a little bit, and off I come down here to lovely San Diego.
Nice.
And start personal training at a new gym franchise, and just really start stepping into my journey of service, you know. And teaching and coaching and empowering from like experience that I've had, you know, and fitness through working out, from, you know, walking to the gym to Marib 24-hour fitness to coming down to San Diego, just sharing what was like really the guidepost in my remembrance, my restoration, which was like working out and physical fitness.
And I guess finally you're not coming at it from a point of desperation. Like it seems like you were in so many of those other jobs getting in the door because you just needed a desperate job. So the door you walked into wasn't kind of the perfect door. And yes, you were maybe finding some active service in that, but it was always pretty imperfect, hence the failure to launch.
Yeah.
This was like, okay, you were actively invited into this gym and given resources to, like, through this door, and given resources to actually find your place to really have a right way of serving.
Absolutely. I think when one is really stepping into mission and service and actualization, like, and that's a beautiful little tie back just quickly with like, this woman gives me The Alchemist. I never read the book.
Oh, you never read it?
Never read it. Until after I read the book. And
after you broke up,
after we broke up, and I made a cheeky little fucking heart when it said Will.I.am.King. There's a line that says Will.I.am.King. I made a little cheeky heart. And I got high and I fucking was biking over. I spilled beer all over the book. And I kept it with me. I burned it in a fire earlier this year, or last year. And, you know, there was something really symbolic about this book, right? Because the alchemist, when he's on the path, he listens to the language of the wind, and the whole universe conspires in his favor when he's on that path. So that's what I'm, you know, exactly. When you are like, okay, ready to be of service, hey dude, you'd be a great personal trainer. Here's your PT cert, here's your gym, go for it.
Dude, that mate I mentioned, who's episode 2, kind of, I guess, a bodybuilder dude, for him, his crucial moment was The Alchemist as well.
And it continues to
Same
track
book.
to this day, like the pyramids. And this is something we can get up with the Guatemala chapter, is like the pirate, you know, buried treasure. The treasure, like, it was in his backyard, but you have to go through the adventure to remember that. So that's what so we talk about remembrance, pirate journey, Captain Hook, you know, cowboy, like all of these little clues and your divine path and like your true essence. It's been there the whole time. It's always been in your backyard, but you got to go through some of the shit in the dark forest and the dragons to like remember that.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the dark night of the soul. That's the, oh fuck, I've been here before moments, you know?
It's awesome. And I love how you're very much like me in the respect of really framing your life as a story. That's the only way I ever do it. That's what this whole podcast project is about for me. I love framing my life as a story. I feel it's like a selfish, arrogant cunt just constantly telling my own story.
Sure.
So I want to make sure I'm telling others as I go. And maybe mine will get told as we go. And not just that, but helping others tell their story, I think, is going to be important. Have you always told and thought about your own life as this story, or has it only been in the last few years?
Yeah, I love the question, because I think I have always been drawn to the story and to the epic tale. And I, you know, with a mutual friend of ours, like when shared like the hero's journey and finding Joe and the framing of this great tale. And I think part of me like appreciates that, like in a lot of ways the hero, like the book gets written after the journey and like somebody writes it on his behalf, you know, and he's not like actively telling it himself, because his essence and his actions, like that speaks the words, that speaks for him, you know. And the reason I like to share is because what my belief is that like my story is just one version of all of our stories, right? And that's what I hope to share today, is like, you know, this is just my version of what everybody goes through. Oh fuck, this isn't working. What my parents thought they were doing, like I had to find in my own accord. They did the best that they could via their society and their upbringing and United States, and like everybody's doing most of what the best they can, but that doesn't mean it's your own version of your highest expression. Like that comes only from your own dark night of the soul and your own ego death.
There's always relentlessness about it. Like I'm just constantly smashing myself against this wall and realizing it's not the wall. I have to smash through it to find the next wall.
Yeah.
If you just get stuck because this wall is pretty and I can study the bricks of this one, you never find what's
exactly,
on the other
man.
side.
Exactly. And yeah, I just think there's this great tale that like yearns for our surrender to it, you know, that it's like almost like you're on the roller coaster. You're just getting tugged along. And this is like, you know, the hero's journey and the alchemist and the Celestine prophecy and some of these incredible books that came to me. It's like really the same tale of just saying yes and allowing and surrendering, and that's when you look back and you see the pirate energy and you see the cowboy energy and you see those breadcrumb moments and the, oh fuck, I've been here before. You see the story moving itself forward through you. And when I started showing up to it, like saying yes to Guatemala, for instance, then you look back and say, oh fuck, now I know. You don't see it in the moment, right? You don't see the chessboard. But like really what the hero has to do is swing the sword and is take the step.
Cool. All right, so let's keep on telling the story if you got anything.
Yeah.
For it.
While we got sun, and
Yeah,
while
yeah. We got half an hour left though.
yeah, beautiful, man. And we
This-
love the golden hour here, man.
Bloody gorgeous, eh?
Oh, right.
Golden hour, it's gonna be blue hour. We literally got like San Diego surfers.
This is my
it's
surf break.
ripping it.
I mean, this is literally my happiest place in the whole world out
Sun's
here.
3 minutes from Ghana.
And I just like this, even being on this beach and telling this story is like an incredible symbol and representative of how great God is. Like that, you know, like I would be a kid from New York with all this, and this is my backyard, at least for now. And like that I get to, with no price of admission, and nobody telling me yes or no, I can get to come out here whenever I want and connect with nature and ride some waves, and it's just incredible, you know? And I'm in awe of the miracle of this life and the reverence I have for just how far we've all come and the opportunities I've gotten from faith and from saying yes. It's just stupendously amazing and something I pinch myself for every day.
shit, yeah.
Fuck yeah.
So you moved down to San Diego with this mate who started a new gym. He's made you front and center, sponsored your ticket to certifying as a PT, and made you the first PT of this new franchise. How soon or why and when and what was the bodybuilding journey of becoming a professional bodybuilder?
So, you know, it was like LA, God bless, it's a more of a creator town. Like, you know, they're in the ego space, like gym guys, you kind of compare contrast. I get down to San Diego, military here, there's some big guys. And I'm like, you know, lifting a solid amount of weight, feeling good in my physique, but I'm like, okay, I get down to San Diego, I gotta step my game up. I go to this busy gym, EO's Fitness, and I'm like, well, so I got to work and eating and putting muscle on, and it was 2020 after the first year, and we'd had a New Year's resolution. And I'm not much of a long range cardio guy. I like to surf, and one of my buddies was gonna do a Spartan race. Kawan, my dear friend, was gonna do the marathon. I got challenged to do the men's physique show. And then COVID happens, and basically I'm training people and I'm training for the show. It was putting a bunch of muscle on and then cutting your weight. So
what were your stats, just for context?
I mean,
don't
I
really
am
know
like
gym stats.
210 pounds on a bulk, and then I basically lost 35 pounds towards the 175 side of things.
Wow.
Which is as light as I'd been since high school.
Yeah.
With basically a depleted ketogenic diet and no testosterone and not much cognitive function, and I got myself emaciated and shredded.
So you just couldn't think, like.
It's a level of deprivation that is something you really, and I'm not going to be like the guy who's done something and oh, you never know, and it is a little bit of that, which is that level of depletion for the human body isn't the healthiest version. And there's a reason why bodybuilding isn't the healthiest sport, because, you know, and the rationale is like, a lot of sports aren't that way. It's not necessarily the healthiest, but it is a means to a certain level of competition. So, you know, here's the guy, the not even JV guy. This was my, okay, I'm going to compete in something. So COVID happens. I literally go to this small show in the fucking owner's backyard because they couldn't rent anything out. And there was like basically 30 people in the show and like 2 people in the category. Myself and another dude who was a lot smaller than me. And it was, you know, I was decent enough and posing. It was clear that I was going to beat this guy. So it was like a shoo-in that I went. And I let my ego love to say I won the show. I have that smash trophy to show for it.
Yeah.
And here I am, like, trained for the show, completely depleted myself, almost like fell off the face of the earth cognitively. And here I am with a giant gold trophy and a pro card, which is what bodybuilders work for years to get, pro qualification.
But you kind of hacked your way there.
I mean, it was like, like laughable that I would win a 2-person show and then I would be afforded pro card. And you don't think my fucking ego loved saying pro bodybuilder? It ate it up for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because scared of the gym to pro bodybuilder was like, but you know, the point was, it was a gauntlet. Hey dude, okay, scared of the gym, small little show, go for it. So this was 2021 that I got to work on saying, all right, I'm gonna show up and give it my absolute best shot as a pro bodybuilder.
To a proper show.
To a proper show. Because now it's not COVID, and you know, you couldn't like book a facility, you couldn't have a big group. So basically all right, I'm gonna train for the show. It was in November, so you have like over a year. Woken up. And I had prepared myself mentally to understand what it was gonna take. And I showed up, and the show was a stone's throw away, literally right down the road from the Sports LA, where I had ran from that bus.
LA.
In LA. And I took 4th of the show out of 7 in the pro category. And, you know, I was psyched out. My ego, the lesser than ego, was like, oh, you're a pro bodybuilder from a small show, you're gonna get lapped off the stage. But I held my own, middle of the pack. Next weekend was the next show in Las Vegas, pro natural Olympia, the pinnacle of natural bodybuilding. Got on stage, pro men's physique, and I love to say, even to this day, I took 16th in the world. Pro men's physique 2021. So, you know, here I am, 16th out of 23, and I was like stoked that, and Greg Jennings, former NFL player, was posing right next to me, and here I am, not making thirds, even hockey team, and I get to have the sign off, the ego check mark of pro bodybuilder. And yeah, the ego loved it, no doubt about it. And what I see now is, like, I say this to anybody, like, put your mind to anything, lean in, show up, do the work, believe in yourself, learn your lessons. Benching the bar to 350 to pro bodybuilder, like, anything is possible.
350 pounds.
350 for a single. You know, so that's the journey, and that's why I've loved the strength journey, because it really is that binary. The weight either goes up or it doesn't. You're either progressing in your weight training or not. Like, you can't. Arnold Schwarzenegger's a famous quote: "You can have results or excuses, but not both." So the point is, like, it was that binary, and I produced a hell of a result in my fitness. And this is where we'll transition, like, to honor time, and like the meat of my spiritual journey, which happened when we intersected in Guatemala, was like, I have this at the end of 2021, and I went on a psilocybin journey after the show in Zion National Park with my friend from LA. And I went to Angel's Landing the day before, and I'm having this moment in Zion after the show. I'm pigging out, I'm fucking stoked. And we did this psilocybin journey, and this is why I think plant medicine. We're gonna slow down and like breathe into this part of the story. And I'm with the court of the patriarchs, these 3 pillars, mountains, and they got this like message of like, Will, is this like, are you really learning and integrating into an egoless, divinely ordered, like, masculine version of creation, or are you like perpetuating the swing of the pendulum? Not on the varsity team, random kid, didn't get into school, dumped, and look at me, pro bodybuilder, get the fuck out of my way.
So you're giving that power by letting it fucking
The pendulum wants to swing. It's the law of polarity, where the ego wanted to be the biggest, baddest dude in the gym. All the dudes wanted to be friends with, all the girls wanted to be with. And like, did I experience some trappings of that felt good? Fuck yeah. And ultimately though, like, that was a tower that was always gonna fall. So I'm getting this message, and then I come into 2022 after the show, and I started to remember that there was a spiritual calling. I had kind of went through 2018 pretty quickly. I did an ayahuasca journey. That was really probably the most uncomfortable physical experience I've ever had. I got nauseatingly sick, and I didn't have a really powerful, potent psychoactive experience, and I got literally floored by the medicine. And it was so uncomfortable, I said I'd never do it again, but 2022 came along, and
that was 2018
before I moved to San Diego. So it just frames it coming back into 2022, and I get called to do ayahuasca again. And they say the medicine calls. And I was home for the holidays, and okay, I'm gonna do the ceremony in January, and I'm gonna go out to do it. It's in Sedona. And I go out for a one-night ceremony. I drive fucking 8 hours out to Sedona, which is incredibly spiritually charged. It's a spiritual vortex, and show up to the ceremony. Still COVID times, and the medicine didn't make it. It was the second night. If you go to a medicine ceremony and you're coming in the second night, they've sat the night before. It's kind of like you're coming into a family in the middle of the dinner. Because they've had this incredibly spiritually bonding experience, and you're kind of coming in halfway through. So, point is, I get all the way out there. I dieted for weeks, and I prepared myself, and I'm like,
there's no dinner left on the table.
No dinner left on the table. And it was kind of like this get back to work. Dude, you're not ready. And basically, it was this huge check that I had felt, and I'd heard after they rescheduled the ceremony later in the week, they couldn't do it. A guy in the ceremony had literally had a huge break, and things can get a bit uncomfortable in these spaces. And I know now, like, I wasn't, like, and part of it, I don't know, it wasn't just me, but like, I wasn't meant to sit that night. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna come back 2 months later, and I'm gonna sit for 2 nights. And I got to work at really preparing myself energetically, and I came back in March to Sedona with the shaman that I had sat with before. And the first night was like what I would describe as an ego death experience. It went through all the things that I'd done for my ego, the weightlifting, the chasing women, the relationships, and it was like shepherding me through this journey and this death of like my ego. And all that I had done as Will.I.am.King to like feed into that. And the second night, and like I'll cry. I can't even really remember most of it, because it was like 2 years like led me to that weekend. And it was like my first like real experience. And this is why I have a lot of reverence for plant medicine, how it can like prepare you. It was like, this is the beginning of the rest of my life. And that's like, it felt like 2 years it put me in Sedona on that weekend. This was March of 22, and I came back, not really, you know, you have like a really divine experience, and you go to Sunday school, and you meditate a little bit, and you practice positivity, and like, in my experience, until you have that like taste, feel, divine frequency experience, like it's one of those, like that's what all the hype is about. It's not in the story, it's not in the Bible, Quran, it's not from the preacher, it's like felt. God, spirit, mountains, it's all connected. And it was like, oh fuck, like what now? Life is never the same.
How do you, because so many guests already on the pod, for instance, and so many people I know really have a before and after ayahuasca storyline. How did you go, and I haven't asked them, in bridging that and actually, okay, I felt this and it's never the same again, blah blah, but how do you actually like harness that energy and take it into the rest of your life?
And that's what we talked about, integration, and that's the hardest part. You receive, and then like, what now? And what I see now is like I didn't have the tools or resources or network to do so. So like, the gym that I had worked at was getting sold, and I hadn't really been told about this. It was kind of, we had a new gym opening, and there was like the summer, we were calling it drifting in between gyms, and I'd saved up some money, and it was like I was kind of drifting, and it was like wandering. And I made it back out to Yosemite a couple months later, and this was like a really special place for me. We did some psilocybin mushrooms, and I'd had that goofy bumper sticker moment message come through, like, not all those who wander are lost. And like I see now that like I was meant to, you know, I have this like huge wake up, rest of your life moment, and then it's like, okay, you're gonna be like pirate ship floating a little bit for a little while, because you don't have the network or the you know, the resources to like integrate this, dude. Like, you didn't grow up with any teachings, nobody taught you how to do this. So like, I'm gentle with myself, knowing now that like, oh yeah, I was always gonna go that way.
There was always, I mean, ayahuasca in particular was shamanistic practice. Often I think a boy to man ritual, like in the Amazon, the people who it's kind of in some sense meant for have been bloody skinning piranhas and doing all that stuff
Yeah.
and been living within nature for the whole time. And then Eleusis in Greece, it's like it was always part of this whole societal structure and makeup of our life, where for us we're kind of the societal structure and makeup of our culture and life is so removed from that kind of thing. Wrongly, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
The no shit, you're drawn towards that, but then how do you integrate it back into this? Yeah.
It's the work of a lifetimes, you know. So here we are in 2022, drifting and open, you know. The new gym finally opened, and you gotta kind of build up clientele again. And our dear friend Zuro AZ, God bless you, AZ. You know, I was helping him move, and he was wanting a trainer, and you know, like we had been friends and went to Burning Man together, but he was kind of, hey man, you should come down to Guatemala, you know, we'll figure out something logistically, and I need somebody to support me through my 40th birthday. And I kind of was like, Guatemala, Lake Atitlan? I was like, no, fuck, like what? I didn't even heard of Lake Atitlan. I knew he was like down in Guatemala, but we weren't like really in touch. He'd be a hard guy to get hold of.
Because also Guatemala
Yeah.
has quite the reputation, anything south of the border has quite the reputation that the American psyche, especially that rich white American society or psyche. Had you always, what was your perception of south of the border, Latin America?
I mean, I wouldn't even pretend to have much gnosis of it. I'd been just on a few family vacations. I've been to Ecuador. I've been to, Ecuador. Like on a family vacation in the Galapagos, which is beautiful, but like a curated family vacation.
Sure.
So like
And Galapagos, not even really Ecuador. Though.
we'd been a week in Quito, and you know, but it wasn't, Ecuador's gotten maybe a little story for another day. It's different now. But you know, living abroad and vacation is like, it's completely different energetically.
Sure.
So, and this is once again, like I'm open, it's 22, I'm drifting. Okay, like work, there's this slack tide moment. A friend comes in with an opportunity, and I was out at my favorite surf break.
Yeah?
You know, it's I had my friend David came back to visit, and I was in a position to like give him a fucking grand tour.
Nice.
And it was a way of like paying him back for a lot of the belief that he'd had in me, in you know, some of my leaner moments. And he drove us around to all of these breaks and paid for the gas, and like literally, God bless this guy for supporting so much of my fun in my LA days. And we had this incredible week where we came out here and served and went to the Dodgers game and went out camping, and we were up in LA helping Azuro move, and we put our surfboards in the car and we came out to our favorite break at sunset. And I'm out at sunset, and it was kind of one of these moments of like end of the chapter. Oh, I'm going down to Guatemala. It's kind of like decided for me. It's not up to you, dude. You're going to LA. You're going on this new adventure. Like, you're getting pushed out the door. The phone keeps ringing, and the hero is gonna answer sooner or later. And I've started to like understand the yes is the only way. And we're sitting here because of it, you know? And so cut shot to me, going down there for a couple months, feeling it out. Epic Lake, staying at La Iguana, going out to El Mirador. Oh, I can make this work. All right, come back to San Diego, put all my shit in storage. Beginning of 2023, full send back down to Guatemala.
Nice. So what was the plan? So Azuro has his 40th birthday, and you're...
Yeah, I mean, Azuro, he's a master marketer and a master of vision, and we had this vision of retreat center and 40th birthday, and it was like a half-baked idea, you know. So it was one of those, like, sounded great on paper, great friend, mentor, guy I looked up to, you know. It was like a fuck yeah, let's go for it. But you know, like, we kind of figured out on the fly. It was like two dudes living in a house on a remote lake, half-baked plan, you know. Where is this really going? Nobody really knows.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, for context, what I guess was the culmination of the half that had been baked ended on that 40th birthday party night, and that was quite the evening.
Yeah, it was.
I remember, I think I might have told this story on the pod, but if I haven't, I told it a few weeks ago when we were on a hike. But it was a Friday night, and that was pool tournament at the Iguana. and I was signed up with Susie, who's like my mum on the lake, and she was very excited. You know, we're gonna play pool together. And you'd mentioned, or Azura had mentioned, he'd done this like 45-minute kind of immersive experience, which is amazing.
Essentia.
By the way,
Check it out. Check it out.
I've listened to it so many times since. I've probably got the most listens, I reckon, on Spotify. 100% I actually have. And
I'm sure he loves that.
Yeah. I texted him once a few months later and said like,
still on Spotify.
Yeah, it's like singing and kind of rap and poetry and then really good music, and I just use it to meditate and I start holding my breath a bit. But it was designed for, on his 40th birthday, he had this crazy, like the biggest mansion, best mansion in Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
And a beautiful like private chef cooked dinner.
Yeah, we landed on the fucking lawn in a helicopter.
In a helicopter. A few like, you know, cute girls that they just picked up off the street that day essentially.
Yeah.
And designed to take with a bit of like a microdose of psilocybin of mushrooms, listen to this track and fully just delve into the meditation that it provides. So I'm again at the Iguana on this Friday, signed up for the pool tournament. I think I just had dinner or something. And Will, who had mentioned come over for the 45 minutes, he was like buying some wine off the bar and he's like, come on, we're about to start. Just come over, be 45 minutes. I was like, oh yeah, pool
I bought us 2 shots.
Yeah, pool tournament doesn't start for an hour. Okay, I got time. Next minute, we're like eating a fancy dinner, then having 1 gram of chocolate mushrooms I only had, which usually 1 gram is not too much. You're fully with your senses, and that was a full send. And then just this track, like 10x the effect.
Yeah.
I was about to swim across the lake, so I found myself like a week later, so I found myself kind of in the pool on my own.
Yeah.
Kind of holding my breath underwater, communing with the lake monster, like let me pass, let me cross, let me swim.
You were out there.
And then I was in this is the best bit that I always tell. I was in a spa, the jacuzzi was on. And you know how jacuzzi bubbles and lights, so I was kind of holding my head underwater, and when your ears are in the water with the bubbles, that's all you can hear. And I was kind of holding my breath and coming up for air and holding my breath and doing this crazy mushroom meditation thing underwater. And then I found myself, I left my ears under the water because it was so, you know, powerful. And I was staring up at this moon, and I was just like communing with the moon, like Luna, you sexy fucking beast. You know, just staring at her for like 10, 15 minutes. And I kind of noticed in my periphery a few people come into the jacuzzi, but I was just kind of just staring back and forth. And when I finally looked up, there were just 6 boobs in my face.
Tough life.
I was just like,
Yeah.
And very shortly after, both Azura and Will popped in.
Oh yeah, we weren't far behind there.
No. Anyway, that was one of the highlights for sure. Yeah. So yeah, your time in Guatemala.
Well, I mean, it's beautiful you tell that night, because ego constructs and ego-based creation will always get removed from the chessboard. So, you know, good-looking women in the hot tub, gallivanting around. What's the real plan here? So, one thing leads to another, and there was a hard stop to 1 chapter on the lake.
Of the half-baked plan.
On the half-baked plan. You know, officially out of the oven. Good luck.
Okay.
You know?
Was there tension there? Was there...
You know, man, it was, you know, naturally as things evolve, friction and evolution happen. And, you know, like as men, like we're all seasonally part of this like army and this movement. And yeah, there was a shifting of the tectonic plates and a removal of that half-baked situation from the chessboard. And
so you probably, and I hope this isn't like prodding in soft spots, but you'd probably come in, at least in the Guatemalan context, because it's only really been a few years since you're really finding your feet in any realm, right? And then you got the bodybuildings. Finally, I'm not average, I'm fucking top of the thing and something, and I've got my money sorted out now, like to a certain extent, so I'm not desperately fucking getting fired from a $9 an hour job and blah, blah. Then the Guatemalan context, okay, I'm good, but I'm still under the kind of pinnings of this other dude, kind of the, for want of a better word, I guess, the B role.
Yeah.
But if that dude's not really figuring out what's going on, and I'm figuring out, at least within this context, finding my space, finding my people and stuff, so there must have been a bit of clashing heads.
Well, yeah. I mean, and it's not a discussion on anybody's character, anybody's capability or their life or whatever it may be. It's like, even when you are in a B role to a quote unquote A, that A will continue to look for Bs that are serving their current mission and state of their affairs. And when that bee is not as relevant or helpful or supportive, another bee or whatever will come along, and that's just how the game goes. And like that's like the radical detachment of like, oh, you know, Will, like you're just like anybody else in any job or relationship that I've learned, you're only as good as your usefulness until you're not useful anymore. You're not needed anymore, and then you're gonna be left behind. And it's not personal. And once again, like if you don't position yourself for that wave and that continued ascension, you're gonna get left behind. And once again, that's what happens, right? And in that moment, so much comes up. All the stories, all the fears. I'm in a foreign country. There's no plan. I'm running out of money.
But was this one the same thing? Because it seems like this time it wasn't that, like with the other girlfriends, they'd been wanting to launch and you hadn't been ready to launch. This one, it was almost like you were launching, the other plan wasn't launching, right?
Well, I mean, there wasn't really a plan. Right. It was a, you know, like at least in the short term, there was like a one chapter of a short-term plan. Yeah. The long-term plan, like I think still remains incredibly valid and underway. And that speaks to like an incredible friend to this day that is like a fucking huge mover in consciousness. And, you know, these visions take years to take form. So the point is, like, in that formation period, there are seasons and chapters in like how these things take creation. Okay, retreat center on the side of a mountain. Oh, there's a year of digging out and setting up, and then there's one structure, and like, oh, this is like a long game.
Sure.
So what was a few months experience that may have led to something else, oh, okay, it's still a longer game.
I think what I'm trying to say, it just seems unreasonable for you to judge yourself in the same manner that you might have probably appropriately judged yourself in the other two breakups beforehand.
Yeah, and once again, it's like, these are just the facilitations of different areas of growth. So like the transition is like, okay, I came down to the lake as a B to the A of somebody else's vision, right? And a beautiful vision, and one that I still actively root for and am supporting in a way. But the whole idea is like, what is my vision? What am I here for? And in the fucking Alchemist, what's he looking for is the pyramids. And I'd had a beautiful woman that I was involved with, and she had been a student there, and I'd met a couple people that went there. And once again, this is where plant medicine still was an integral ally, and I'd not been consistently using that as that means. But I'd had an incredible younger brother, we're peers. And similar, like Romel was like a Guatemalan rock star, 20-something years old. A huge ally for me down there that we'd met. And he was a really beautiful friend like you. Like I didn't have a lot of friends down there, but he was one of those characters that had kind of just been around because it's a kind of a transitional place. Sure. And he came over to his dad one night and we smoked a joint, and I was kind of figuring out what the fuck to do. I had to get out of this house. I had nowhere to go. And it was Las Piramides. Go over to Las Piramides.
Oh, the pyramids.
The pyramids.
In San Marcos.
So in San Marcos, which is the hippie town, 2 towns over from where we were living. And mind you, our town was boat in, boat out, no road access, quite remote. So we'd been over there a little bit to go to the gym and go to a couple dances, but it's a spiritually inclined community, and they have this incredible metaphysics, meditation, yoga school. It's been around for 30 years. San Marcos was a cornfield when the woman founded this place, and has since turned into a spiritual hub people come from all over the world to be in. And I just got this message, go over to Las Piramides. And they do this moon course in between the full moons. And I was like 1 week late, and they just said, hey, I called them up, hey, you got space? Yeah, come over. Is it cool? I'm late. He's like, it'll be perfect. I walk in the first day, it's 13 women living on the property and myself. And I'm living in this fucking...
Such feminine energy, the lake.
Right? And I walk in, and the first day in the temple is Shanti Sakaira, an incredible Guatemalan woman with her staff, looking like the incredible wizard, galactic being that she is. And whoa boy, off I went. And she's got this dreams week where she talks about lucid dreams and astral traveling. And it's like famous. People come from, all over the world to just take this week. But it's a 1 month long course with 5 days of silence meant to help you situate and remember your mission in life. And I was 1 week late, and I go through my silence, and I have this moment of completion after 3 weeks, and I didn't get my achievement red belt. And my ego was like, where the fuck is my red belt?
Because you didn't do the first week.
Because I didn't do the first week. Because I'm, and I decided that I was going to have my own moment. They do the moon ceremonies, and that's when you get your belt, and that's the completion. And it's an incredible ceremony at the second location up on the mountain, El Arca. It's the second location away from the lake, directly up in the mountains at 7,000 feet. The most beautiful meditation school place you could ever imagine. Looking out over the lake, but like removed. And you go up there to get your belt, and I'm like under Mother Mary, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like my ego, I'm finding my spirituality, like things are dying. I remember the night of my silence, I'm like on the dock, looking out at the lake. I was sad about this chapter closing, and I see this like kind of little adolescent Guatemalan stray dog kind of limp up and sit kind of next to me. And it was this symbol of like this little adolescent guy, those imprints that I talked about dying off, and I basically scheduled another week because I'd paid for the month, and I did a channeling session with this woman, and I'd had a dream where she basically, you start to work in your dreams. They say you have this astral etheric body in which encapsulates the soul. 21 grams exists, only between life and death. There's 21 grams unaccounted for, and that's where the soul hangs out. Right? They say.
They've weighed people before.
They weighed people before and after, and there's 21 grams. They don't know where the fuck it is. That's where they say the soul, and it's legitimately metaphysically known as the astral etheric body, and they teach you in this school how to leave your body consciously in dreams and travel in this subtler space.
This 21 gram body.
When you're falling asleep and you have one of these, like that's the body removing itself.
Whoa.
And I had a lucid dream and woke up in my dreams, and this one wasn't quite lucid, but it was super vivid. And she calls me up in the dream. She's showing me pictures of her parents and telling me to remember the mission, remember what you came for. She mentions Egypt and Europe and Scorpio, right? Scorpio. And my former partners, a couple beautiful women were Scorpios. And
both? Even the 6.5 year one?
6.5 years, she was a Pisces.
Okay.
Fish, but water. Water, right? Scorpio is a water element. And this is the powerful symbol of Scorpio. Scorpio, the story is the scorpion dies for the eagle to fly. And mind you, I've been wearing this eagle necklace around the lake, and we're coming from the United States, bald eagle. And this woman is in the dream, reminding me of the mission. I go to a channeling session where you're alone in the temple, pay a few hundred Q, and she channels. She has access to higher states of consciousness, and she tells me that you're remembering your mission. You have incarnated here as part of a collective mission to help shepherd the evolution of consciousness and the next step of humanity, as she calls it. And then you've incarnated at this time to be a shepherd in this process. And the alchemist, as we know, the boy is a young shepherd. So you're leading a flock. And we're not looking down at sheep or any lion's not sheep. There's a lot of like energy around looking down upon less conscious folks as sheep or whatever. But more spiritually evolved souls are tasked with shepherding, right? So what she is telling me that is I am on a journey of remembrance of my mission and my abilities to help perform this role. And I was, floored that I was remembering, and I was being validated in that. And she then talked about ego for like 15 minutes and was remembering all my path, but reminding me of like the trappings of what ego is, which isn't bad. It's just a sense of individuality of like Will.I.am.King, that's all I know, that's all I am. And ultimately that story of Will.I.am.King will keep me as a more dim version, as a blunted version. So the sequitur is, she tells me basically that there's more work to be done, and it is it was time for me to go to the sun course, which is 3 months.
Upsell.
Upsell. And I had been deciding this already.
Yep.
And she is telling me, it's time for me to go to the sun course.
Does she say that to everyone, or does she see something in you specifically?
So I you know, more accurately, I was deciding whether or I should go. And she basically told me, welcome to the sun course. It was kind of like this, you're coming on up. And I've been there with all women, and it was the first all male sun course in fucking 30 years.
Wow.
There was a more masculine young female that was part of our course, and it was 4 men, 3 men and a young woman, and it was a masculine energy to the sun course. And it was like, I'm talking about my mission of men, breakthrough camp, men's work, masculinity, and there was an alignment with, okay, coming up to El Arca to do the sun course in an all basically masculine male group.
Yeah.
And it was a month or so later, I went to Colombia, had a beautiful time with a gal that I met from the lake, and it was kind of this closeout season. I'm traveling and having fun, and I come back to the lake to do the sun course.
How much direct, because for context, like you've just, I don't know if this is like a meditation retreat or a cult or whatever it is, but like it's pretty hardcore. Like, you know, you're doing these lessons of all this esoteric knowledge and metaphysics stuff, and then you get finished this is the moon course for a month, right? And you're eating real clean and light and vegan and all this stuff, and then 5 days of silence. The sun course is the same thing, but what, 3 months?
3 months.
And the 10 or 40 days?
So it was 10 or 40, and I did 10 or I did 5, and I was like, I'll do the 10. I'm like running low on cash. Like I said, thrust out with no plan, half-baked idea.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna do the 10 days. I'm gonna go surf. I'm gonna like get back to California, and I'm gonna go back and start working at this new gym, the Mission Hills gym that's gonna open. Get back to personal training, get back to service, helping some people and saving some money. And that gym is like maybe opening in August, and I was talking to my dear brother Dan, and who's the owner, and maybe I'm gonna come back. And I was clear that gym was delayed. It was off into the ether somewhere, who knows? So it was kind of clear. I get back from Colombia, I go up to the sun course, and it became very clear very early, the sun course is the 40 days of silence. You meditate on the tree of life, the Sephirot, and it just became like almost clear within a week and a half is we started in silence. We had the other retreats who are the more advanced students, they start in silence, and we were there at that time, so we basically started in 3 weeks of silence.
Right, 40 days of silence, isn't it?
And I heard 40 days, and I was like, you're fucking nuts. Like, I couldn't wrap my head around like 40 fucking days. I've heard of 10-day Vipassanas, but I was like 40 days, and I couldn't wrap my head around it. I thought you were like, oh, you're fucking
going
nuts.
to go crazy.
You're gonna go crazy.
And what? Because it sounded like when you described to me afterwards that the 3 months, it's 3 months before that.
So it's a month and a half.
Okay, a month and a half before that. That's pretty silent as well, isn't it?
Well, the first 3 weeks were. So
what are you actually doing up there on the hill?
You do an hour plus of yoga.
So what your day starts, you wake up in like a hut.
You wake up in your little pyramid, and you have some crazy dreams. You write down your dreams, and you get situated, and you go to yoga class at 7 a.m. I never missed one yoga class. 7 a.m. on the mat, an hour, 15 minutes. Then you go to breakfast.
What's the breakfast?
Figure it out.
Fruit. Oh.
I would do a bowl of oats. I'd make my oats the night before, and I'd have a little...
so you have there's a kitchen and ingredients.
Kitchen?
Yeah.
Where there's no DoorDash out there. You're figuring it out.
Do you go down to Pana?
You go to Pana maybe once a week.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Or they would, in silence, they'd have a woman that would shop.
Okay, cool.
And she would drop it off.
Yeah.
And you go to yoga, and then you would have an hour meditation, and then you'd have another hour meditation in the afternoon, and that was it.
And the rest of the day,
The rest of the day, you can water the gardens, you can go draw, you can paint, meditate, right? And you're on a few acres, and there's a giant tree of life, and there's like this wooded area with all of these incredible altars to some of these ascended masters and beings, the Buddha, Archangel Michael, Virgin Mary. The place is it's like a Disneyland for spiritual folk. I mean, it's literally, it's just magic. This woman is a gift from the galactic beings to Earth. She's just an indescribably beautiful Guatemalan soul that built this incredible center dedicated to bringing light to the planet Earth. And here I am, this gringo from the United States, and she told me, like, in this channeling session, like, basically, who the fuck is this guy? Not in a bad way, but in her cute way. But she'd seen, like, okay, this dude is, like, committed to something here. Not, like, taking ego credit, but there was an authenticity to my seeking, you know? And she saw that and was rooting for me, you know? And
nice. Well, real quick, what are the kind of rules as well? Are you allowed to read? I presume there's no phones, like.
Well, I mean, once again, you can do whatever you want. You know, it's not about necessarily.
So people scroll them?
It is what you make of it, right? So that's what's so empowering about real spiritual teachers is like they are like opening up a pathway and a route, but they're not telling you what to do.
So they're laying out the landscape and not forcing you down the right path.
Exactly, because if you don't like find your own path and you're not on your own bootstraps, it's not of your own doing.
And how will you bridge the gap to real life when you step outside the Disney?
Exactly. So my point is saying like, you know, you have a blank canvas and so much time. So I have these 3 weeks and we're basically doing Kabbalistic Hermetic studies and working with the principles of the Tree of Life. And essentially it was like a metaphysical complete deep dive into esoteric wisdom. And this helps to frame your consciousness for deeper levels of meditation. So like when you meditate on the Tree of Life, you start to understand different fractals of vibration and how they show up in our version of creation. So you can start dreaming and meditating on these different principles, and they start to like wire a little bit of gnosis of like what the heck is actually going on. So what is distilled for us as Malkuth, as our version of reality, is many different layers of vibration that meet in the below. So they talk about as above, so below. It's an ancient Hermetic axiom that like, if you look at the below, you can see all the principles of divine creation at work.
So there's footprints of the gods in the grains of sand and
in everything.
Yeah.
And you start, like even right now, like slowing down, listening, and you can remember, and you know, these 40 days at the end were, I mean, indescribably beautiful. I had my 33rd birthday about 20 something days in, and
that's a big 33. That's Jesus shit.
33 is the Christ year, and they have a Jesus altar, and I basically sat with the altar on the night of my birthday, and I cried like a fucking baby. I cried like almost like I'd never cried before, and it was like releasing that young guy, that dimmer light, that wallflower will, all of those imprints, and I was releasing all of that like in this Christ year, this death year, this resurrection energy that was yearning to come through for me. And you know, those 40 days like were really the galvanization of what started like out in Sedona. It was like me leaving behind a former version on that mountain. And I spent you know, a number of days like having really incredibly visceral dreams, lucid dreams. I woke up one night and I fucking got stung by something, and I shook out my shirt and it was a giant scorpion. Right? I talked about the Scorpio energy. And I came back and I had this crazy visceral dream. I'm looking at a pool and there's a bunch of kids' toys in there. And I didn't want to jump in the pool because there's a bunch of kids' toys. Because we're thinking about the water element, and it encapsulates all of memory and all of vibration, and like there's so much of my own imprints in there. Right? So it's telling me, Spirit's telling me, you have to like clear and clean and release some of these things, you know? And I have this incredible dream, and I'm thinking about this death process and the death card and meditating on, and I have this incredible birthday and catharsis. And I remember on my birthday, like crying out to the cosmos, and I like right in this little pocket of clouds, it was like this shooting star answered my prayers. And like they say, that shooting star had fucking burst 1,000,000 years ago. And here I am on the hillside of Guatemala on their 33rd birthday, like having this call and answer to the cosmos. And like, it's just indescribably, incredibly beautiful. At the end of the 40 days, she brings you up to the temple. It's inside. You know, this is an indoor temple.
Sure.
Archangel Michael at the entrance. He's on my phone. He was right near outside my pyramid. You scurry around Archangel Michael. You sit down after these 40 fucking days. And I sit down immediately on my bench to close out the 40 days, and a big ass scorpion scurried out from under my bench. And I'm gonna cry just thinking about how obvious like the breadcrumbs are, the language of the wind of the alchemist. You come to the pyramids and you see it. You know, the scorpion has to die for that eagle to find its wings. So like all of the failure to launch, all of the moments where I wasn't able to take my flight, it was like I had to let that scorpion die. And it was like in that moment where that was the kind of like capstone. And it's not a finished job. It's an everyday process of death.
And what is that scorpion, did that represent those girls that you clung on to for
the girls, the previous versions, the bodybuilder, my trophy smash, like all of these stories about Will.I.am.King and who that gentleman is, like as beautiful as a soul as we all think and see, and me too, it's like he's an instrument for God's will, for divine will. And when I can finally surrender and get out of the way and really listen to the language of the wind, that's the only way we can really fly, you know. And that was the end of that Guatemalan chapter. And, you know, I went back down to the lake to ground and to get my footing back. And I had an incredible woman come back into my life who was there to study at the same school. And I ended up back out at El Arca for one of the last moon ceremonies. And we ended up back out there together, and we're together to this day. And, you know, the mission has always called. And I came back to San Diego to help support the opening of a new gym, Mission Hills, where I have supported people in fitness once again. And I've come back into service and to come back into direct support. And I've got this incredible woman by my side, and we're integrating all of this incredible frequency and learnings from Guatemala. And we're back inside the lines in the United States, you know, putting things back together and creating again and being of service, and you know, all the trappings of that. So, you know, that's really how things have shifted back into where I'm at today, and back into fitness and helping people directly with health in the physical way. But that also offers me the opportunity to work more energetically, and getting into work as an energy healer and working with subtle frequency. And I had the opportunity to co-create with my beloved brother James Franzel in a couple breakthrough camps, and we are, you know, dreaming of the next iterations of that. And we had a couple weekends out in Joshua Tree last year, incredibly supercharged galactically and cosmically. And there's a lot of incredible irons in the fire of this next step of my offering to folks with all this experience that I've had. So that's where we're at, man. That's most of the story, man.
Oh,
incredible.
So good. I know it's like fucking pitch black essentially in the camera, but I have two questions. One, how does, obviously the scorpion, the ego had to go, Will.King had to kind of let fly away, but when you've gone through such these circles and these hoops and these learnings and have so much to offer and serve, and always have, but really have increasing amounts of understanding of how to help them and the most direct ways to affect people, I'm sure the ego wants to affect everyone and touch everyone and have heaps of, as we said on that call the other day, like leverage to really like lever onto people. And do you struggle with that still, of like, yes, you might have real impact on a few people at the gym, but most people don't get affected by it? Is that a struggle, or is
every day, man? Like the idea that the ego dies and like we're done with it, I don't think is the case in my experience. Like it's just peeling another layer back. So like every day you say, oh, am I doing enough? Am I helping enough people? Am I being of my highest service? And I know I've got a long, you know, I don't want to see, that's even a former definition. Like I'm on the way. It's not having a long way to go. There's a lot of things that I still am choosing to do. So even there I have a long way to go, and that's like another storyline that comes back. No, like I'm actively pursuing that. I'm choosing continued evolution still daily. And naturally the ego and the leverage or lack thereof it's an everyday contextual, kind of like journey where you're like, is the context of what I'm up to good enough? Am I having enough of an impact? Am I making enough money? Am I changing enough lives? Am I respected enough? Am I healing enough people? Or, and ultimately it's just about showing up as best as you can and a little bit better, today than you were yesterday.
Sounds like being increasingly confident, I guess, with the direction and the quality, and then having faith that the journey is still running its course.
Yeah, I mean,
that seems like
exactly. Once again, like faith. Okay, the story is going to write itself. I have to just keep listening, and through the darkness, through the duality, like, can I see the next step? Can I just fucking make that step? If that's a yes, and there's a willingness there, like Will.I.am, it's like my name. It's the name that was given to me. Both my grandfathers are named William. Like, that's an incredible part of my story. Will.I.am.King. Like this poetry of my name and like what that's meant to represent. And the whole joke is like, Will, we are. And who's the we? It's like this great galactic cosmic divine order of God's children. And like being just another vessel for that, I'm on the way. Story just writes itself.
Yeah. Shit, yeah. And my other question that came up was this idea of the character, the pirate, the cowboy, within the context of San Diego and within a stable, loving relationship where often, I think, can clearly be counterintuitive against the free-flowing, swashbuckling pirate. You can't really have a wife and kids back home, right? Like, that's the direction your life's kind of steering towards, and stability in America and the monies. And is the pirate chapter done? Is there still utility in that? What's going on with the pirate?
Yeah, I mean, like 34 and linear time and mid 30s, and there is like, that 33, it is kind of like the trappings of youth and some of the luster and ego dependencies and desires like really start to strip away, and you start to simplify and look to what's really important. And I think the answer really comes into a metaphysical principle of like forces and form, which is like form is what we know as reality and has how things take shape in creation. So the essence of the pirate will never leave, even if it takes a different form that may not be on the surface as free and as swashbuckling. So I've just learned to continue to allow for form to naturally take care of itself in a lot of ways.
Focus on the force.
Focus on the forces. Like the divine masculine forces are like what predates anything else. And masculine energy isn't male, it's just penetrative. After this abstract, like cauldron of unknowing source energy, there's this little spark, and get to work and go for it. And that's the masculine energy. And it's achieving all that we know. And like we're not really meant to think about it too much. We're just meant to like allow it to unfurl. And like the chessboard and the steps and the synchronicities just kind of take care of themselves. And yeah, sometimes in your 30s you kind of, my arms aren't as big, my sleeves are a little looser, I'm not going out all the time, I'm not having. So do you miss some of those things? Absolutely. And you don't like shame that part of you that's still tied to that, but you're also not allowing that previous imprint to run the show anymore. It's not about letting the kids' toys completely die and put out to the garbage. You're just clearing them off to one side of the pool, and you're working with them, not against them. So it's not the scorpion dies and goes away. That energy remains, it just gets transmuted. And that's really ancient alchemical principle, is like in all is mind, in everything in creation, nothing is created nor destroyed. So the pirate essence doesn't go anywhere. The cowboy essence doesn't go anywhere. It just takes a new shape.
Goes from lead to gold.
Exactly.
Well, fuck. Huge. I have a lot of questions. Man, fucking, one of those ones.
we leave it all out there. I mean, we got the raspy voice like full base camp.
That was beautiful. Look at this place.
Incredible, man. We literally closed it out. It's dark here. We're gonna scurry back up the hill in darkness, and
Yeah. Aspen's like, what the fuck?
you know, we're gonna go grab the cow girl, cow lady, cow woman, and off we go.
All right. I look forward to listening back to that one.
Oh man, wow, dude.